Hello folks, Scott here with the My Monthly Hero March of 2020 kit. This kit is another Heroscapes kit. Now Hero Arts was having some production delays this month, so they didn't start sending their kits out until March 16th. So I believe they got shut down in San Francisco on March 17th. So hopefully everybody is getting their kits. My theater and all of the Broadway theaters shut down on March the 12th. We don't know for how long. It may be 2 months. It may be 1 month. As of now, my workplace is saying we're not back until April 2nd. I heard in a conference call yesterday that that may actually go through the end of April. We'll see. We're all playing it day by day here. I hope you are all well and healthy, and your stay-at-home time is spent in your craft room. Let's take a look at what Hero Arts has provided us this month. We are going to Japan with Cherry Blossoms and a new Heroscapes stamp set. This is our 6x8" stamp set. We've got a cherry blossom tree, 2 layers, a little, looks like a Zen garden type thing, 2 layers. We've got a grassy knoll, 2 layers. We've got a tree trunk. We've got some extra petals. It looks like there's a couple of little stone pagodas here in 2 layers. These look like rocks in 2 layers. We've got 4 sentiments. Thank you, live life in full bloom, stop and smell the blossoms, and thinking of you. I love the new Heroscapes stamp sets. I think they're absolutely gorgeous. We do have 5 coordinating frame cuts. This will cut out your grass layer. It has no bottom to it. Looks like the 2 pagodas, the tree trunk, and the tree. Of course, we get lots of extras this month. We have a pink puff embossing powder, supposed to puff up when it is heated. Pink puff embossing powder. We get 5 ink cubes this month. Count them, 5. Green Hills, Field Greens, Dusty Blue, Rose Madder, and Cotton Candy. I love it when Hero Arts gives us ink cubes. And then we also get some Hero Hues cardstocks. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cardstocks. These are 5.5 by 8.5. So we have 2 of the peony, 2 of the kiwi, and 2 of the mist. Kiwi, mist, and peonies. Of course, these Heroscapes are extremely popular, and this kit sold out way before they started shipping. But I hope you'll join me for my 10-card 1-kit video. I'll try and come up with as many different ideas as I can possibly think of. So let's see where spring and cherry blossoms can take us this month. And here we are, folks. My 10 cards are done. It took me a little bit of time this month. I have to admit that I found this kit to be a bit of a challenge. So I figured we'd just dive in and use the kit contents for our first card. I know a number of people were wondering what the actual colors were. Green Hills and Field Greens, I think, is what we were confused about more than anything. Of course, this is Rose Madder, Dusty Blue, Cotton Candy, Green Hills, and Field Greens. So for my first card this month, on a white card base, and we have our Thinking of You card. Now, the only ink on this card that's not included in the set is the tree trunk I stamped using Hero Arts Cocoa and Sandstone. Sandstone and Cocoa Hero Arts ink for the tree trunk. I did a little shading on the side of that with the darker ink. And then the 2 pagodas are stamped using Hero Arts Soft Granite ink. So of course the grass is stamped with the Green Hills and Field Greens. The treetop is stamped with the Rose Madder and Cotton Candy. The 2 pagodas, stone pagodas, are stamped using soft granite. I die cut all of those with the included dies. Now I do like to go through and make a little template for my dies to use. That way I get a nice, excellent cutout on my stamped images. I like using little templates. I used the Dusty Blue to ink blend a little bit of sky in the background here. I die cut that background piece with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I also die cut the bottom of the grass with that as well. Glued those both together, matted those on a piece of the Peony cardstock from our kit. The Thinking of You is stamped in the dusty blue ink and embossed with some clear embossing powder, so it has a little bit of shine. I thought this was a little flat when I was all done with it, so I grabbed one of my white gel pens and started adding little white highlights all over the place. You can see all the little grass down there. You see little dots in the trees and dots on the blossoms. I got a little carried away with my gel pen there, but I think if you don't focus on that, it looks really nice. I did use an alcohol marker to fill in the little stones in the kind of pathway here, and there at the bottom of the tree, I took a little bitty hole punch and punched a bunch of pieces from that Peony cardstock and just scattered those around the bottom as if those were blossoms that had fallen. I really like this card. It's very pretty, even if it is pink. Now, it doesn't quite feel like a cherry blossom tree to me. I think of cherry blossoms as more white with just a touch of pink. So let's try something else for our next tree here. On another white card base, we've got Stop and Smell the Blossoms. And that's a little bit more of my idea of a cherry blossom tree. I found this pattern paper in my image stash from who knows when, and I trimmed that down with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, mounted that on a thin white mat and then a thin craft mat, and glued it down to my white card base. I stamped both the tree trunk and the sentiment using walnut stained Distress Oxide ink. I stamped the tree trunk on a piece of craft cardstock, matches the craft right there. I die cut the tree foliage from a scrap of white cardstock and did some ink blending on the tree with Tattered Rose Distress Oxide ink. Then I stamped the foliage detail stamp on the cutout with Versamark ink and embossed that with the Pink Puff embossing powder. That looks a little bit more like a cherry blossom tree. I glued the trunk to the back of the foliage and then mounted those both to the card front using some foam tape. When that was done, it all felt a little pastel-y to me. So I grabbed a red gel pen and I went in and added little red dots in the centers of all of the blossoms of that pattern paper. That adds a touch more interest to the card, a little tiny pop of color. And this pattern paper, it's kind of spot on perfect to use with this kit. Stop and smell the blossoms. There's plenty of blossoms there for you. Now, I don't do this often, but I did do it on last month's kit, and I'm doing it again on this month's kit. Our packaging of our stamp and die kit had a lovely, lovely image in that, and our third card is Live Life in Full Bloom, with that lovely cherry blossom branch from the piece of cardboard holding our dies and stamps. Really, really pretty. I really like this card. I die cut our cardboard with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, matted that to a thin white mat, a thin craft mat, glued that down to a white card base. I stamped the sentiment using Acorn Archival ink, and I clear embossed that so it wouldn't have any chance of smearing. I think this image is what gave me the idea to put the little red dots in the middle of the blossoms on this card. As you see, the blossoms are pretty white with little dark pink in the centers and just a touches of pink. Love this card. Live Life in Full Bloom. That's certainly in full bloom. So I've only used those images from our packaging 3 times in the 2 years plus that I've been subscribing to Hero Art. So I don't feel that bad. I don't feel guilty about that at all. Now that takes care of 3 of our 4 sentiments in this kit. All that's left is the thank you sentiment. And on a craft card base, we've got our thank you card. I started this card by making my own pattern paper on just some parchment-like paper, just some thin yellowish parchment paper, not even cardstock, just plain letter weight. And Hero Arts recently paired up with My Sweet Petunia to produce their own line of MISTI stamping tools. Now, I have had a mini MISTI for a long time. I never thought I'd need anything bigger, but when those black and white MISTIs came out at Hero Arts, I was thrilled to get a regular size black and white Hero Arts MISTI. Isn't that beautiful? And I used this to do my pattern stamping to create this pattern paper. Now, your MISTI comes with a pad of paper. I always take one of those pages and just laminate it, so I can keep that for a long time. The ink will wipe off on that quite easily. Wrap a little piece of tape around the bar magnet so it's easy to grab and pick up. That's my new full-size MISTI from Hero Arts and My Sweet Petunia. I love the black and white. Now, I stamped the tree trunks and the foliage using Stampin' Up! Tip Top Taupe ink and stamped the detailed stone lantern stamps using Simon Says Stamp Barely Beige ink. Then I blended frayed burlap and vintage photo Distress Oxide inks over the whole background. I then trimmed that background down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. I matted that on a thin ivory mat and then glued both to a craft card base. I really like that pattern paper, and I considered just stamping thank you in the middle of that, but I thought this card needed a little bit more. So I went searching on the internet for the Japanese symbol for thank you, and I found this great vertical rendition. Arigato is what that is in Japanese. Arigato is thank you in Japanese. I imported that into my Silhouette software. I colored it red. I added a little black drop shadow behind that. I printed that out and then cut this down. This is 4 7/8 inches tall and 1 1/8 inches wide. I matted that to a thin piece of ivory cardstock and glued that down on top of my pattern paper there. I'm super pleased with this sentiment. As you can see, it has a nice black drop shadow there. I did practice that a couple of times. There, I'm a little too far off. Here is much, much better. I stamped the thank you sentiment using VersaFine Onyx Black ink on some of the extra beige printed paper. And when that was nice and dry, I shifted the stamp a tiny bit and stamped it again with Versamark ink and embossed it with Love from Lizzie Cherry Red embossing powder. Perfect, excellent, great red. It covers up that black completely and just lets that little shadow shine through. I love that sentiment. Of course, it has a little bit of shine to it as well. I finally die cut that sentiment with a Spellbinder Decal rectangle die and mounted that to my card front with some foam tape. I thought this needed one more little pop of red, so I dug around on the internet and found this Japanese symbol for love. I again turned that red, gave it a black drop shadow, printed that out, fussy cut it, glued that to the top of my card. Everything has been distressed, of course, with the frayed burlap and vintage photo oxide inks. Thank you. A really nice thank you card that I feel really sticks to the theme of this kit. Very Japanese. Of course, red has always been known as a classic Japanese color. Thank you. Okay, that covers the 4 sentiments that were included in this kit. I decided to search out some real Zen sayings to go along with the rest of my cards. This one caught my eye first. When you reach the top, keep climbing. I thought that sentiment was the perfect excuse to grab our July of 19 Hero Arts kit and use these mountains and hillsides from this stamp set to continue our little meadow scene on this stamp set. I die cut the mountain and the hillside dies from the July kit using a couple of shades of purple cardstock from my stash. I stamped the detail mountain stamp with Hero Arts soft granite ink and added some mist ink blending at the bottom of both of those using Hero Arts unicorn white ink. It's not very, you can see it right there, you can see it right there, a little mist at the bottom of our mountains and our hillsides. I took a panel of white cardstock and die cut the grass piece from that. I stamped the tree trunk first, of course, using sandstone and cocoa Hero Arts ink, and I clear embossed that so I could ink on top of that and it would resist any of the ink. I ink blended the grass portion with Twisted Citron and Peeled Paint Distress Oxide ink. It gets a little darker as it gets further away. I also added both layers of the stones from the stamp set amongst the grass using Hero Arts soft granite ink again. I took the other half of the die cut grass panel and ink blended the sky using Hero Arts reactive ink in creamsicle and grape slush. Really pleased with how that came off. I finished that with a light sprinkling of stars using my permanent white gouache ink and a tiny paintbrush to sprinkle some stars in that dusky sky. Once all 4 pieces of these were colored, I lined them up together and die cut them all with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. Before I put them all together, I turned to my Silhouette software and printed this sentiment on the grass portion of this. When you reach the top, keep climbing. This is in the Sign Painter font. I printed that in brown directly on the grass piece, and then I assembled everything together. Now I wanted a little bit of dimension between these layers, so I die cut a template of plain paper with the same Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I glued the sky portion to the paper at the top, then added the mountain with just squares of foam along the top edge, and the bottom part of that is glued down. I added the hillside with more little pieces of foam at the top edge of that, glued the bottom of that down, finally added the grass with no foam at the top of that, nice and flat. Then I cut a thin white mat and a thin dark purple mat and glued them all together and then down to the white card base. The treetop is die cut from a piece of green cardstock and then stamped with the detail layer in the Green Hills ink and then shifted a little tad and stamped again in the Field Greens ink. I added some branches among the foliage using my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers and attached that to the card front with foam tape. I then dabbed in some light suggestions of shadows for the rocks and for the tree using a gray colored pencil. I really like this, a really pretty card. When you reach the top, keep climbing. Combining the elements from both of those My Monthly Hero kits was a lot of fun. Gave us a really lovely Twilight card. Now, I've been itching to try a one-layer wonder card with this kit, and I wanted to try filling a landscape card with these stamps. I know I'll have to cut some masks, but I think I'm ready. And we've got Pause and Reflect. I stamped the tree trunk in Hero Arts sandstone and cocoa ink and the pond in dusty blue. I placed the tree so the trunk would come right at the end of our detail grass stamp. So I can use the trunk to mask when I shift the grass over and stamp it again. That's why the tree is there. I cut a mask for the pond and for the tree, just the trunk. That was all the masking I needed. I stamped the detail grass using the Hero Arts lime green ink, and I shifted the stamp over to stamp the right side of the tree. The treetop is stamped in Hero Arts lemon drop reactive ink, and the leaves in lime green fizz reactive ink. Now, I clear embossed some of the water ripples from the July kit. There's the water ripples right there. I clear embossed some of those into our little pond there for a touch of shine, a little ripply in our pond. And I stenciled in the line of clouds in the background using a My Favorite Things mini cloud edges stencil and some Broken China Distress Oxide ink. Of course, I did use a die cut to mask off the top of the tree while I was stenciling in those clouds. Now, because I didn't stamp the background grass stamp, I had a lot of white space on the ground here. I decided to grab my Prismacolor pencils and I filled in all the white with multiple green colors, keeping my pencils nice and sharp and using short strokes to imitate the grass. That worked so well, I continued on the stamped portions of the grass and some in the pond, and even added a little extra colors to the treetop. I also grabbed a dark green alcohol marker and did some little dots in the tree for a little extra dimension, a little extra color in the tree. Now that was very nice, but it needed a pop of color. So I took the petals stamp from our stamp set and I embossed them using the Love from Lizzie Cherry Red embossing powder all along the ground in many different places, just to give us some flowers in and amongst all of the grass. The flowers in this scene are just the right touch. Now, I did print this Zen sentiment last using the Silhouette software and the Blackjack font. I did, of course, use my little piggyback printing method to print that right on my card front. Pause and reflect. I like the slight little gag that a pond is actually reflecting. Okay, maybe that's a little bit of a reach. I'm very pleased with this one layer wonder card. Pause and reflect. Now, I thought there had to be another way to color this tree. Somehow, some way, maybe get a little more than 2 or 3 colors going on there at the same time. Putting the little dots in the tree using my alcohol marker gave me an idea. And we are all branches of the same tree. Boy, isn't that appropriate these days? Very Zen sentiment that I think kind of outlines our condition right now. Love this tree. I actually grabbed my light green Spectrum Noir markers, 1 through 5, 5 different greens, and I took a negative die cut, taped that on a scrap of white cardstock, and then filled in the treetop with dots of all 5 of those colors. As it started to fill in, I tried to give a little shape to the tree with my colors. When I was happy with the coloring, I stamped the detailed tree stamp on top using the Field Greens ink from the kit. Now that's what I've been looking for. I love that. I stamped the tree trunk again with the Hero Art Sandstone and Cocoa inks and added a touch of grass at the very bottom there. I die cut the tree and the dark green mat with Hero Art's oval nested frame dies. I did some light ink blending on the tree oval piece using some Broken China Distress Oxide ink. Then I glued them both together. Now I printed this background and die cut it down with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. So that's 3 3/4 inches tall. I trimmed off the edges to be 4 1/4 inches wide. I printed the sentiment, very topical, on our card front using my Silhouette software and the Blackjack font. I think I like that Blackjack font the best for this card set. We are all branches of the same tree. I glued the background to the card front and I edged that with some Love from Lizzie green mirror peel-offs. Great embellishments. I love Lizzie's peel-offs. These are the Sway peel-offs, so they have a little wavy edge on one side of them. I added those to both sides of the pattern paper and then mounted the tree oval using foam tape. I think this is my favorite tree from all of my cards this month, and I think this sentiment is actually kind of perfect as well. We are all branches of the same tree. Okay, let's see. 6 of these last 7 cards have had that tree stamp on it. Let's see if we can do something else with the other stamps in our stamp set. This is on, again, a white card base. sometimes silence is a really good answer. Now here's a Zen garden for you. I stamped the 2 rock stamps in a variety of directions to make this rock stack using the Hero Arts soft granite ink. I did look up rock balancing on Wikipedia, and I was really pleased when I came across this from Wikipedia. It says, rock balancing has also been described as a type of problem solving, and some artists consider it a skill in awareness. There's your awareness. That sounds pretty zen to me. Now, I masked off the bottom 3 rocks. Yes, I cut little tiny masks for those 3 rocks, and then stamped the Zen garden using Simon Says Stamp Barely Beige ink for the background and Hero Arts soft granite ink for the rake marks. I added some tiny touches of foliage around the perimeter of the sand with alcohol markers, and use my colored pencils to again add some detail to the rocks and a little bit of a shadow on the ground. I printed this sentiment, I love this one too, using the Blackjack font directly on that front panel. Sometimes silence is a really good answer. I trimmed the front panel with a little bit smaller Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, matted that on a medium width red mat, matted that on a medium width gray mat, and then mounted those to my white card base. I really like this stack of rocks that I was able to achieve with just 2 different rock stamps, just flipping them and turning them in every direction. Mostly flat, this card still has some great dimension. Now, I had to search high and low and really rack my brain. I asked everybody I could possibly think of if they had any Zen puns. And I think this fit the bill very nicely this month. Just be every now and zen. Now, those little stone pagoda stamps are generally used as lanterns in a Zen garden, so I decided to light one up. I used my homemade sunburst stencil to stencil in the background using Hero Arts reactive inks in Lemon Drop, Creamsicle, and Fruit Punch. And then I added more lemon drop to fill in the spaces around that. I stamped the larger pagoda using soft granite ink, and I fussy cut it all out along with the 2 little windows on the sides. I die cut a scrap of yellow cardstock using the die from the kit and glued the 2 pagoda pieces together. So that pagoda has some nice yellow glow all the way around that. I printed the pun on the front panel using my Silhouette software and the marker felt font, every now and then. That really matched this sentiment that I actually die cut from a really, really old marker micro alphabet die. I die cut that sentiment from some black tie glitter cardstock, and since there was a little bit of glitter on that sentiment, I decided to flick my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen all over this and add a little bit of glitter to this whole card. I think this is the only card that has any real glitter on it whatsoever. I die cut the front panel again with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, matted that to a thin orange mat, glued that right down to my white card base, and then I added the pagoda with a little bit of foam tape. I tell you, I think we're all learning how to just be these days. At least every now and then. That makes me giggle. And that brings us to our last card, a nice big 9-inch card. This will fit in a business size envelope. Now, I have been thinking about this card while working on all of these other cards. I wanted to do a card featuring 4 trees illustrating the seasons of the year. So I played around quite a bit with stamping and spacing, and I was having some issues with getting the trees to actually fit on a 9-inch card. I kept trying different spacings, different arrangements. Here's one also where I thought I grabbed a leaf from an old My Monthly Hero kit, but those were too big. Maybe just the stamps, maybe just the dots. I fussed and fiddled around with this for quite a while, and finally, this is what I came up with. I just realized that the thank you card worked really very well, right along with the Japanese theme, and we could do these 4 trees on panels or screens if you would like. This is very Japanese, I think. This is on a 9-inch by 4-inch card base that fits in a business envelope. The panels are each 1 3/4 inches wide by 3 1/4 inches tall. They're cut from some ivory cardstock. The tree trunks are again all stamped with sandstone and cocoa inks. The foliage is stamped in Barely Beige from Simon Says Stamp, Stampin' Up! Tip Top Taupe and Early Espresso inks, and some Early Espresso and Barely Beige ink on that last one there. The birds are from the July kit as well, and the petal stamps are simply leaves falling from our last tree. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. I ink blended all over the 4 panels again using the frayed burlap and Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink. I matted them all to thin black mats and then down to this red card panel that's cut to 3 3/4 inches tall by 8 1/2 inches wide. I added 2 strips of the black cardstock. This is 1 7/8 inches tall to the center of the card on each side and glued the completed panel on top. Of course, we do have a sentiment. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. Love is always in season. I again printed that on the inside of this card using my Silhouette software. This again is in the Blackjack font, and I added those 2 little Japanese symbols for love on both sides of that. That's on the inside of our card. Our seasons are on the front of our card. This would be a great Valentine card or an anniversary card or any kind of an occasion when you'd like to express your own long-term feelings for someone special. I really like this, and I'm thrilled to finish these 10 cards with another very Japanese-themed card. So that's my 10 cards using the My Monthly Hero March of 2020 kit. I'm very pleased with the wide assortment of cards I achieved this month and the very zen nature of most of them. As I mentioned, this kit sold out very quickly. If you don't want to miss out on any of the future kits, I would highly recommend subscribing. If you subscribe for the 6-month plan, you can skip out on a kit if it's not to your liking. Personally, I find that I make some of my best cards with kits that I thought held no interest for me. Sometimes you just have to bust in and do it. It has been an absolutely crazy month here in New York City. I've been surprisingly unmotivated to be creative. I am working from home, fortunately, and thought I'd be crafting up a storm, but I can't shake this depressive ennui and brain-deadening despair as this pandemic continues to spread. We've got field hospitals erected in Central Park, for heaven's sake. Oh, please, please, please stay safe, be healthy, wash your hands often, and stay home if you can. As a special treat for you with this post and with our stay-at-home guidelines, if you send me a note at cardcutups@gmail.com, I'll send you a PDF with all of my sentiments, patterns, and Japanese characters that I used on the cards this month. Maybe give you a little bit more playtime during your stay-at-home time. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me here. I hope I was able to distract you for a little while and maybe give you some fresh ideas for using this kit. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't touch your face. And as always, I wish you happy crafting. detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.